Before you stands Hyrkan, the guild's deity and strongest player. One day his best friends were cornered, breaking into a cold sweat. Surrounded by the Queen of Lightning Sylve's gang, their days were numbered. Hope had faded, the execution order had already been given. Right then, Hyrkan stepped onto the scene to lay down the law. He had the power to save everyone, and signaled his friends not to be afraid. But what he didn't count on was that the real snake was right by his side. Those he called friends crept up behind and stabbed him in the back. They say the most painful betrayal always comes from those closest to you. As if the cowardly attack wasn't enough, the girl even started mocking him. Turns out he bought these traitors off with a few million. Hyrkan was dirt poor and relied on this game to survive. Dying in the game would bring him to the brink of bankruptcy in real life. Hyrkan, or rather Hyun, was on the verge of losing everything. He thought he could trust people, but the sound of money drowned out the voice of friendship. Back in his own home, he woke up and screamed at the top of his lungs in a fit of rage over his defeat. Warlord was the world's most popular game, making fortunes for those at the top. Hyun was famous for his talent, but out of loyalty, he stayed in that small guild and fell victim to his own naivety. Blinded by rage, he grabbed his things and bolted, heading out to find those traitors and settle the score in real life. His friend called on the way, but Hyun was blinded by rage and didn't even notice the red light ahead. That famous Isekai truck hit our boy full speed and crushed his bones to dust. Even while writhing in pain, his mind was only on the betrayal of those traitors. He swore revenge, no matter the cost. Suddenly the scenery around him shifted, and he found himself back in the Warlord game's starting tutorial. The system ordered him to slay a Minotaur monster. While trying to figure out what was happening, he heard the two rookies' cries for help. They're begging for help, describing how the monsters slaughtered their friends. Only these three remained, and the giant creature stood before them. Our boy looked at this view and thought this monster should have been removed from the game 5 years ago for being too hard. The other two players were shocked to hear this. They stared blankly, saying the game only came out 10 months ago. That was the moment it finally clicked for our hero. He had returned to the start of the game, 5 years in the past. While the others trembled in fear and begged for help, he drew his sword and charged the monster alone. The Minotaur charged, but he danced away, turning the beast into mincemeat in seconds. Both players were left speechless by this power. And to suck up to him, they invited him to their guild right away. At that moment, our hero remembered his old team and how he was sold out for money. He didn't think twice, he just butchered those two innocents right then and there. She no longer intended to trust anyone in this life, not even her father. After logging out of the game, Hyun woke up in the real world. He looked around. Instead of his home, he was in a V-Gear store. The place where they sell equipment to play Warlord. He remembered how 5 years ago he could only look at these devices from afar because he had no money. It used to only crawl around on demo units. Slowly, he realized time travel was real and that fate had done him a favor. With this enlightenment, he realized he had no time to lose. Hyun now had a massive trump card in his hand. With 5 years of gaming experience and all the future cheat codes in his mind. If he played his cards right, he could get a nasty revenge. He got hyped and tried to buy a V-Gear set on credit right away. The seller was frightened by the boy's behavior. But he tried the process anyway. But while Hyun plotted his revenge, he faced the bitter truth. The clerk said there weren't enough funds on the card. Poverty hit him like a slap in the face. He forgot he didn't have a penny in his pocket. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been stuck on demo units back then anyway. Even if he had no money, he now knew one thing very well. With the game, making a fortune was only a matter of time. But first, he needed that damn equipment. Turning his head, he saw the smirking face of the traitor, Silin, on a Warlord ad. The Lightning Queen was everyone's favorite back then. Hyun had no other choice. Even though he hated that woman, he had to play along until he got what he wanted. After a while, a brand new V-Gear set arrived at his home. The technician did the setup and got the system ready. Hyun could only afford this expensive toy by sinking deep into debt. He borrowed a full 10 million won from a loan shark. The loan shark didn't hesitate to give the money, but brandishing his knife, he hinted things would get bloody if payment was late. Hyun didn't want to take this path, but the fire of revenge had blinded him. If necessary, he'd crawl to the depths of hell just to get his revenge on those traitors. He was even willing to make a deal with the devil. He finally entered his own V-Gear capsule and returned to the Warlord universe. As his character transformed into Hyrkan, he knew it was finally time to take the stage. Right then, a stunning character named Ariadne appeared before Hyun, announcing the end of his training. This mysterious guide said they were there for the class selection that will determine your fate. The adventurer was finally ready and had to make that critical decision that would shape his future abilities. He had 3 main paths to choose from. This choice would determine his survival ticket in this cruel world. The first option was the warrior class, a melee expert perfect for maniacs who love action-packed, adrenaline-pumping battles. Jaehyun chose this path in his previous life. He remembered those days full of blood and sweat very well. But back then, leveling up was easy because he had a team backing him up. Now he was on his own, and carrying this burden alone was going to be pure torture. As a second option, Ariadne presented the priest class, which acts as a total nanny by healing and buffing allies. But Jaehyun grimaced as soon as he heard this. He didn't have the patience to put up with other players' whims and waste time with them. The guide stated that only the third option remained. Then, he blessed our hero, now named Hyrkan, and sent him off to the class tower, where his destiny would be written. An old man greeted Hyrkan at the tower, looking as if he'd swallowed 1,000 years of dust. This NPC introduced himself as Golko, the guide to the path of magic. Golko didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point, asking what kind of magic Hyrkan wanted to get involved in. Hyrkan shouted without a blink that he wanted to learn dark magic. The old man was shocked by this request and wondered if the young man would choose another way. But she didn't give up on the name Hyrkan. Golko explained that dark magic is powerful, but it devours the user's soul, essentially making it a suicide mission. Jaehyun stated he was aware of the risk and craved that cursed power for that very reason. Faced with this crazy insistence, the old man's attitude changed, and he showed his true dark face. Golko said that for a long time, no young person has dared to walk this dark path. Then he took out a creepy black book and told Hyrkan to place his hand on this skill book if he was truly ready, but warned that this path was treacherous enough to make even the bravest hearts tremble. Without hesitating for even a second, Hyrkan pressed his hand onto that cursed book. He shouted that his heart wasn't weak and wanted to get this over with quickly. The wizard, laughing like a madman from an asylum, finally declared that someone interesting enough for him had arrived. Jaehyun felt the coldness of that dark magic in his veins for the first time. He remembered stories of a legendary Necromancer player who brought world bosses to their knees alone in his past life. And this was the exact power that Jaehyun now held in his hands. The terrifying power of a Necromancer. His class and skills had now been determined. Jaehyun immediately started testing his bone fragment skill. With this skill, he could create loyal undead allies from the bones of dead creatures. That's what the Necromancer class was all about. Now his only goal was to level up, and he planned to dive into the nearest dungeon. But when he looked at the ally he'd created, he saw its head was missing and realized this wouldn't be as smooth as he'd imagined. He entered the training dungeon shortly after, but cursed how fragile his skeleton was, looking like it would crumble in a light breeze. Because according to his past life, skeletons weren't supposed to be this fragile. He took the chance to check the skeleton stats and realized this weakness was due to its low skill level. So Jaehyun had to level up at the speed of light. Right then, several wolves bearing their teeth stood in his path, and Jaehyun thought this was the perfect opportunity. These wolves weren't very strong, but they were fast. So they were the perfect subjects to test Jaehyun's combat performance. Jaehyun called his bag of bones partner back and ordered his ally to attack the monsters. The skeleton stood up, struck a cool battle pose, and challenged the wolves. Jaehyun ordered the immediate destruction of the enemies. The skeleton jumped on the enemies like an action hero. Jaehyun thought at this pace, he'd reach the top much faster than expected. But these expectations were shattered in seconds. Because his ally had been crushed to pieces right before his eyes. Jaehyun didn't expect such a crushing defeat. Only a sad skull rolling on the ground remained of his ally. When Jaehyun realized that something had gone terribly wrong, he grew desperate and checked the statistics again. It turns out he forgot to set the mode. That's why the skeleton bit the dust so quickly. He immediately chose defense mode. But unfortunately, the skeleton was once again prey for the wolves. In that case, Jae-yoon decided to try the special action mode. But when the skeleton started dancing with the wolves instead of fighting, Jae-yoon's brain fried. He started thinking it was a nightmare because he couldn't delete his account and restart. He had no class changes left, and his loan payment was due. Just when he thought he had things on track, life dealt him a heavy blow. What's more, he was left with a completely useless junk ally. This situation left Jae-yoon deep in thought. How did that legendary necromancer from his past life bring the world to its knees with such a trash class? Suddenly, a warning flashed on Jae-yoon's system screen. An option to increase the skeleton's combat power has appeared. Until then, Jae-yoon had to handle the wolves with his own hands while his useless skeleton just stood there. But at that moment, it hit him like a bolt of lightning. The skeleton wasn't just standing there blankly staring at the view. It analyzed its master's every move second by second, learning martial arts from the beatings it took. And there it is. Jae-yoon finally figured out how to turn this pile of bones into a deadly weapon. As he thrust a stick into the skeleton's bony fingers, he reminded it to be grateful for serving a master like himself. In his previous life, Jae-yoon was a legendary genius who took ordinary players to the top. He was famous for molding guild rookies and turning each into a high-ranking officer. Jae-yoon turned to his ally and said, "Keep it in mind while you fight. There's only one rule: if you don't run, they'll crush you." Then Jae-yoon mercilessly brought the club down on the skeleton's head. This brutal beating continued until the poor bag of bones learned to dodge the blows. But the skeleton was developing with frustrating slowness. Losing it with rage, Jae-yoon screamed, "Don't just stand there like an idiot after getting hit. Run first, then find the gap and hit back." After this torturous training session with his master, the skeleton was once again thrown to the wolves as bait. But this time, things were very different. The skeleton was putting on a real show. Following his master's cruel orders to the letter, he escaped with agile maneuvers and struck back with lethal precision. The skeleton sent the whole wolf pack to the afterlife all by himself. Although Jae-yoon knew his ally still had a long way to go, the progress was undeniable. Plus, thanks to his ally's new abilities, Jae-yoon had leveled up as well. After a while, our heroes set off toward Figus Castle, the game's starting point. The village square was swarming with thousands of recruiters shouting for fresh blood for their guilds. But Jae-yoon ignored this noise pollution entirely. His mind was locked on a single goal: to empower his ally and thereby inflate his own personal attributes. Just as he was making these plans, some guy suddenly blocked his path. A warrior grabbed Jae-yoon by the collar, demanding an apology for bumping into him, or he wouldn't let him go. Jae-yoon had neither the time nor the patience to deal with these teenage bullies. They had much more important things to do. Getting ignored pissed off the bully, so he threw a heavy punch at Jae-yoon. But before Jae-yoon could even react, a mysterious hand stepped in to protect him. Adam says to the bully in a calm but threatening voice, "You can't just go around punching people whenever you feel like it, Tiger," he said. Zorba, surprised, "Are you his buddy?" he asked. The man said, "No." But Jae-yoon felt a strange sense of familiarity coming from this man. Suddenly it clicked: he knew this man very well from his past life. Those bulging muscles, veins ready to pop, and that strange outfit. This was none other than Shev, the legendary warrior and assassin from Jae-yoon's past. Even so, Jae-yoon couldn't understand what a god like Shev was doing in this dump. Zorba deeply resented the interference, and told Sieve to stay out of it. Jae-yoon added that he provoked him, so he deserved the punishment. After all, it was an eye for an eye. When Chu heard this, he released such an ominous aura that the bully instantly turned into a frightened kitten. Sev said they hit the man's palm while punching. So in the attacker's own logic, he was the one who had to be punished for this strike. The bully's sidekick quickly jumped in, whispering that messing with Killer Sev was suicide. Shivin knew he was the Red Bull's leader, a high ranker in the top 30, and a total battle maniac. While Zorba wondered what a monster like that was doing there, just as he was about to bolt, Killer Shev asked, "Did he want to keep fighting?" Zorba quickly apologized over and vanished without even looking back. With a smile on her face, Sev seemed pleased that the matter was settled amicably. Right after that, he turned to our hero. He announced the good news that those thugs couldn't mess with him anymore. But instead of being grateful, Jae-yoon turned his back. I didn't need your help. She gave me the cold shoulder. Killer Sev expected at least a thank you, but was stunned by this rudeness. As Jae-yoon walked away, he momentarily admitted to himself how he felt crushed under Chevin's power. But he swore. The next time they met, the cards on the table would be dealt very differently. After a while, in the depths of the dungeon, our hero was thinking about that massive power gap between him and Chev. The enemy Sol and Sivi were on the same level. To get his revenge, he had to become just as much of a monster as they were. Lost in deep thought, a creature suddenly lunged at him. But his loyal skeleton ally intervened in a second. Turns out our clever hero used himself as live bait and pinned the whole thing on the skeleton. When the monster got packed, his ally leveled up. But Jae-yoon looked upset. It took exactly 3 days for the skeleton to reach level 10. This was a much longer ordeal than you expected. Still, our hero had evolved too. And now he finally had that famous watch. With its map, inventory, and messages, this device was vital. He had this device in his previous life and couldn't wait to have it back. But his heart sank when he saw his old divine attributes had been reset. Still, Jae-yoon had to distribute the points he had. Knowing this decision would shape his future, he considered the most logical path for a necromancer: intelligence, or rooting magic. But what did he do? He poured all his points into strength without a second thought. His muscle power instantly peaked, and he felt the difference to his core with that wild power circulating in his body. Not only him, but his bag of bones companion had also gotten what was coming. Noticing the skeleton's existential crisis, Jae-yoon immediately began manipulating it. He claimed he hadn't given up necromancy, but had only resorted to this to ruthlessly train his slave. Giving intelligence a score? Investing in magic at this stage was foolish. Instead, he could have unleashed his power to show those legendary punches from his past life. He would etch those deadly Peak-era techniques into the bones. Jae-yoon was officially declaring that he put his life on the line for this madness. She threatened to rattle the poor skeleton's bones if he didn't take his training seriously. He also added that there are 1,000 tricks to cover up the missing steps in his devious plan. Sometime later, chaos reigned at the Figus Castle branch of the Monster Hunters Guild. The moment the quest giver announced new jobs, a total free-for-all broke out among the adventurers. It was like a bread riot during a famine. Everyone was crushing each other. Ours wanted to slip away from that mess and take a look at the list. The official gave permission, but still. He said only the trash quests that nobody wants to touch are left. They were either impossibly difficult, or the reward was like peanuts. Jae-yoon quickly realized these tasks were deadly boring. But the prisoner had no choice. As he scanned the list, his eyes lit up. The opportunity he was looking for was right under his nose. The Mount Bima Cave quest was basically just grunt work for clearing out low-level creatures. The official wondered if such a pathetic reward was even worth lifting a finger for. Jae-yoon smirked. The reward was a joke, but if he finished this before reaching level 15, he'd hit the jackpot. The ultra-rare title you'll get was worth everything. While ordinary titles increased stats by fixed amounts, the Rising Star title was something else entirely. It multiplied stats by a percentage. In short, this was the first step toward Jae-yoon becoming a character who acts like a glitch in the game. Enthralled by visions of unrivaled power, he decided it was finally time to get himself some new clothes. Time passed, and Jae-yoon arrived at Mount Bima. But the new equipment on it was an aesthetic disaster. He was also aware of this visual pollution. After spending all his money on his bone golem, all he had left were scraps no better than those from a flea market. The resulting picture was sickening. Still, all he had to do was finish this damn mission as soon as possible. That way, she could buy clothes fit to be seen in public. Probably out of embarrassment, he started rushing to complete the task at lightning speed. In the same area, a desperate player begged for help, but no one heard him. The poor soul had just fallen victim to an insidious trap. The pack of jackals lying in ambush awaited their next prey. Then, a gullible adventurer named Multi entered the area. Multi was shaking with excitement, thinking he was a big shot. He had this foolish belief that he'd become one of the best players in record time. While lost in these dreams, he heard someone shouting for help, crying out that his friend was dying. Multi arrived on the spot right away. The other player was whining, saying they were suddenly attacked and ran out of healing potions. He couldn't save his friend alone. Our naive Multi folded right away and offered up his potions. The guy was crying his eyes out thanking me, but it was all just an act. Actually, that crying face was just there to distract you. He was used as bait so his partner could sneak up and take out Multi. And boom! Another player had come to the counter. The bandits started mocking Multi's naivety. They were laughing, saying your things would be very useful. Furious, Multi couldn't understand why he'd been tricked with his arrow logic. The bandit smirked and said, "If only you hadn't been so gullible, my friend." Then he dealt the final blow. As Multi faded from the game, his clock, containing his entire inventory and valuables, was left behind unclaimed. The bandits were cheering for their easy loot. They were the Ralph family. Known as player killers, this gang was already planning their next victim in the same area. Our hero's skeletal companion finally faced the enemy. Hyun ordered the pile of bones standing before the two forest wolves to attack. Instead of defending, they charged like lightning, devastating the skeletal wolves. Hyun realized that the expensive sword he bought for his comrade was capable of slicing through a wolf pack alone. Money was literally talking. Seeing the view, Hyun thought about what a genius decision he made by investing in his comrade. True actors would care about performance, not looks, after all. After the war ended, the skeleton expected a "well done" from its owner. But Hyun said robotically that they need to level up fast, so they're moving to the next battle. The skeleton followed its master, eyes glowing, into the deep forest. Suddenly, mid-walk, an arrow appeared out of nowhere and struck the skeleton. The pile of bones was stunned, and Hyun stood frozen. Right after, someone showed up and started apologizing with fake urgency. That was that scumbag gang from before. They claimed they saw the skeleton from afar and thought it was a monster. The gang leader was playing the "sorry brother, it was a mistake" card. But Hyun knew exactly what these guys were like. Greed for plunder was written all over their faces. And at that moment, the alarm bells inside began ringing wildly. While Hyun acted like everything was fine on the outside, inside he was begging for a mana potion for his ally. A total master of the poker face. The gang leader says, "Why would we have the potion?" In the mood. But he uses the excuse of leveling up to satisfy that bag of bones. Supposedly, they're feeling guilty. They're dying to clear their names, if you buy that, of course. Just as the monsters dropped in, the leader put his devious plan into action. Great timing. We'll wear them down, you land the finishing blow, champ. That's a flat-out lie. These fools actually have a different motive. The gang thinks they've found a fat target to exploit. The plan is simple. First, the bandits will provoke the monster and lure it towards them. Then the mages will buff the monster and unleash it on Hyun. They're waiting for hours to wet himself and drop dead of fear. That way, they'll get the loot without getting their hands dirty. But what is that? Things didn't go as planned. Hyun is taking out the monster as smooth as butter. Hyun, putting on a show with the help of his loyal pile of bones. And you have the nerve to say you're great. Didn't they say keep going? That's the moment it finally clicks for the bandits. Their target's level isn't beginner like they thought. Realizing their prey is no easy target, the jackals unleashed the monster army upon him this time. They would sneak up from behind and finish the target off while it struggled with the monsters. But just as they're about to strike, Hyun dodges as if he saw it coming, leaving the bandit's sword swinging at thin air. The fool missed, and before he knew it, Hyun's devastating kick sent him to the other side. One shot, clean job. Right after that, Hyun gives the order. Bag of Bones is entering combat mode. The duo descends upon the remaining scavengers like death itself. The bandits, their confidence crushed, try to talk it out, but it's useless. Mercy is not in Hyun's book. The dance of bone and flesh begins. No mercy. Hyun knows these types inside and out. They're parasites who gain your trust and stab you in the back. That disgusting type of player who says, "Let's be buddies," then tries to grab all your gear at the first chance. In his old life, he might have fallen for those tricks, but that naive kid is dead now. The new Jae-hun doesn't even trust his own father. Jae-hun, taking out the last bandit, collects a total of 8 player watches from the bodies on the ground. Look at the revenue. He seizes it all, saying the dead have no need for property or country. He needed to get rid of those rags anyway. Meanwhile, our skeleton is busy stomping on the corpse to get revenge for the arrow he just took. Jae-hun sees this wild potential in his minion, and says just let the child have some fun, and remains silent. Once the job is done, he heals his loyal friend. The bag of bones is literally rattling with joy. Jae-hun notices this joy, but with a smug air, he lectures him. Don't focus on appearances so much, kid, style doesn't matter in this game. He spouts nonsense about inner beauty being all that matters, but in those brand new clothes, he's a total monument to hypocrisy. On top of that, he puts the stolen watches on his wrist and enjoys himself saying, "Oh, they look so good on me." Selling another player's watch means getting random loot drops from their inventory. Rare costumes, cool armor, bonus weapons, skill books, clinking gold. For Jae-hun, someone else's funeral means his own lottery. Plus, he's getting stronger faster than expected. Don't be surprised if he starts recording and publishing these shows soon. In the middle of all this chaos, an old memory pierces through your mind. Back when he dreamed of starting a guild with his friend. They were going to name it the Mask Guild, inspired by some crappy mask they found. Those were the days. Looking at the mask in his hand, Jae-hun realizes how much he's changed, how that innocent boy turned into a monster. But now you won't let anyone. On this bloody journey, the only friend he can lean on will be this silent pile of bones beside him. After a while, the duo dives into that famous dungeon on Mount Bima. Jae-hun knows this place well. Maevai is the werewolf's den. Stay out or you'll regret it. But Jae-hun's confidence is peaking. In his new gear, he's sure he'll mop the floor with those wolves as he fearlessly walks into the dark. Hours are passing, not a sound. If the dungeon were cleared, the system would have warned us. But everything's calm and quiet. Something's fishy here. Amidst the deathly silence, a strange, uncanny shimmer catches your eye. The moment curiosity got the best of them, boom. An instant dungeon portal explodes in his face. Now we know why the monsters were hiding. These portals are death traps that randomly spawn inside other dungeons. Normal dungeons are like child's play compared to these. But the bigger the risk, the more legendary the loot. There's just one problem. Once you're in, there's no way out. Either clean it up and be king, or nobody finds your body. A logical player would have turned tail and run. After all, if he dies, he'll get a 2-day penalty, a total nightmare. But Sehun isn't that same coward anymore. There's no going back on your new path. He doesn't even blink. He just needs to survive. The moment he steps through the portal, he finds himself in an arena smelling of blood. An overwhelming, suffocating aura settles over you. Before he can wonder what kind of trouble this is, the nightmare appears before him in all its glory. What appeared before him wasn't an ordinary stray dog, but a massive werewolf, driven mad by corrupted energy. The level may be unknown, but our hero had seen this horror movie before. But even he was shaken by the force of the blow. War broke out with a savage claw of the beast, and Sehun was tossed into the air like a rag doll. The bag of bones was shaking like a leaf, knowing his turn was coming. But Sehun was shouting how lucky he was, laughing as if he'd lost his mind. The appearance of such a monster meant the main quest had come straight to them. He reminded his companion that if they couldn't topple this thing, he wouldn't even see dinner in his dreams. Faced with this threat, as Sehun rushed toward the enemy, his comrades stood ready to support his master. Using its sword like a springboard, the skeleton became a stepping stone for its master. With this momentum, Sehun has made a massive leap. Positioning himself right atop the beast, he unleashed the curse stolen from the demons. He had wrapped his sword in that dark and disturbing power. Sehun now had the dirty power he needed to strike down his enemy in a single move. It didn't just deal a devastating blow, it also cursed the monster, rotting it from the inside out. He had never used this talent before, but was intoxicated by the thrill of hitting the mark on his first try. But the monster wasn't happy about this at all. Livid with rage, the creature attacked from behind, trying to catch our hero off guard. Sehun wasn't surprised that the wolf got back up, knowing a boss wouldn't go down in one hit. Now the real fun was beginning. Hyun decided to play that special trump card he'd been keeping for a long time. Activating his watch, he pulled that creepy thing out of his inventory. Seconds later, our hero transformed into a fully equipped killing machine, clad in magical armor designed to crush the enemy. The active slots feature was a mechanic unique to Warlord. Channeling pure Warlord energy, it boosted the player's stats and reshaped their body. The resulting form was usually unpredictable and varied wildly from player to player. This exact chaos is why players call it the ultimate mod. With superior mode active, Hyun was ready to shed blood. The enemy fixed his eyes, glowing with rage, on him and attacked. But when its claws tried to tear Hyun's flesh, the wolf was only striking the air. Hyun dodged every attack, but the wolf's unnatural, chilling speed didn't escape his notice. Knowing that taking even a single one of these hits would be fatal, he dodged with all his might. But Hyun wasn't just defending. The moment he saw an opening, he counterattacked. With superior mode, his strikes were now strong enough to break bones. Seeing the impact of his blow, Hyun cried out that this brutality made the game even more enjoyable. But the wolf recovered much faster than expected and instantly lunged for Hyun's throat. Our hero barely managed to escape the monster's relentless rage. But Hyun reminded his enemy of a small detail he might have forgotten. She wasn't alone on this dance floor. The skeleton companion was lying in wait. While Kurt unleashed all his hate on Hyun, the skeleton took advantage of this distraction and attacked. Hyun signaled that it's time to test your training. The bewildered enemy had no idea of the disaster about to strike. Under Kurt's astonished gaze, Hyun and his companion struck at once with lethal synchronization. They hit the wolf from multiple sides. They sliced the monster up, not giving it a single second to react. After the beast's carcass hit the ground, Hyun didn't hold back from praising his own massive performance. Not only his ego, but his pockets would be filled too. He was savoring his victory. After all, the toughest dungeons gave the tastiest rewards. Among the loot, Hyun found the corrupted scout's necklace. It was a unique and incredibly powerful artifact. He realized that this piece was not for sale and was at a level far beyond ordinary equipment. Amidst all this chaos, Hyun was shocked to see that he had earned 3 new titles. First was the expected Rising Star title. The second one, Hero Challenger Hyun, it made sense considering he cleared a dungeon all by himself. But the third title, Corrupt Scout, was the real bombshell. Hyun knew this was an entry ticket for the Corrupt Count, the first part of the main quest. The main quest was the backbone of the Warlord world, a vital storyline filled with incredible rewards. Every player would want a slice of this cake. But even in his previous life, Hyun could never get past Chapter 4. This time, the mission opened up much sooner than expected. This situation had Hyun seriously fired up for the events to come. After a while browsing the news outside of the game, he saw that the Hydra Guild's Corrupt Count scenario had officially entered its final stage. The guild leader promised to finish the task within 3 months. Seeing this, Hyun realized he had missed the train. This guild was already nearing the finish line. As for him, he was just getting started. He thought there wouldn't even be a crumb left for him. Hyun weighed whether it'd be more logical to skip this round and focus on the next segment. Or maybe this was the perfect opportunity. Because right now, the whole world was watching the count, and the Warlord's first main mission was about to be completed. If Hyun released his video about the Corrupt Count, he could have hit the jackpot thanks to the global interest. It could have gone viral overnight and made a fortune. She thanked herself for recording everything. And now he wanted to publish this as soon as possible. But Hyun knew the real magic behind every video was the editing. That's why he could only entrust this job to one person, the legendary editor he knew from his previous life. That filmmaker was known as Romain. He was completely unaware of what would happen to him when he got the request to edit Romania, as they hadn't met yet in this life. They were turning up their noses, wondering how special the materials of a level 15 loser could really be. But when Romain opened the video and saw the content, his jaw dropped. His eyes were literally popping out of his head. This isn't trash, it's a diamond in the rough. Honestly, it was the god of the YouTube algorithm. A short while later, a sharp businesswoman, her heels echoing on the floor, summoned her employee. A fresh video about the Corrupt Count has just hit the internet. What caught the woman's attention was the video itself. Just a level 15 player. Yes, you heard that right, only 15. He was taking down a giant corrupt werewolf all by himself. But his employee downplayed this legendary moment, saying, "Oh sir, it was just luck." The team reviewed the footage and labeled it as worthless. But unlike the others, sparks of curiosity flashed in the eyes of the queen on the throne. He gave the order to his employee immediately. "Bring this player to me." This woman was none other than Seo Hyun, the heiress to South Korea's largest conglomerate, Thunder Corporation. And of course, the nuisance from Jae-hyun's past life, his arch-nemesis, known in the world of Warlord as Queen of Lightning, Sil. Just then, when Jae-hyun looked at his phone, his heart nearly skipped a beat. No, the monster didn't attack. He was just looking at the video he uploaded yesterday. The view counts were skyrocketing. Jae-hyun recalled how in his previous miserable life, getting anywhere near these figures was like a deadly torture. But now things were moving at the speed of light. Even with that cold breeze, his air had changed. The woman was literally flooding him with messages. The distant Ice Queen persona from her past life was gone. Roman wouldn't even say hello before. Now, it has turned into sticky gum. Ever since editing the video, she's had a strange interest in Jae-hyun. She was being so clingy that Jae-hyun could barely stop himself from hitting the block button. But Romani's only concern was clear. When's the next video? But Jae-hyun's head was completely empty. The content gods hadn't whispered to him yet. Finding a crazy beast like a corrupted werewolf was nothing like buying bread from the market. So he found the solution in logging into the game. Maybe he'd get some inspiration in the game. On the other side, Shiv was glued to our hero's video. The guy was literally glued to the screen. Shiv had lost count of how many times he'd watched the video, but Hyrkan's moves made his mouth water every single time. Plus, it felt like something was gnawing at me. It felt like he'd seen this player before, but he just couldn't get it out. While he was muttering to himself, Yell from the Red Bulls Guild approached and asked who he was talking about. Shiv said he's talking about the Hyrkan who's taking the world by storm right now. His friend mocked him, saying, "Dude, I think watching videos has melted your brain." But Shiv couldn't stop. Watching that player's fighting style got the adrenaline pumping through his veins. He was officially addicted. He was daydreaming about what would happen if he faced Hyrkan in a duel, but Yell cut him off, saying, "Whoa there." He reminded her to stop talking nonsense because they have a massive live stream to prepare for. Work wouldn't wait. Shiv seized the moment, trying to brown nose by telling Yell how much he admired her. "But hurry up, we've no time," Yell snapped back. Over 200,000 people were waiting for the stream to start, and everyone wanted to see Shivi in action. It wasn't a pipe, it was the killer Shiv. The leader of Red Bull and a legend ranked 9th on the Warlord leaderboard. Right then, a dungeon portal was about to tear open. Shiv and his comrades raised their guard. Shiv ordered the guild members to be ready for the upcoming war. Let's get back to our main man Jae-hyun. He went to the task force but found nothing substantial. As expected, luck wasn't on his side. Still, he held out hope that a lucrative assignment might come his way. With no other choice left, he had to shelve those brilliant video plans for now. Just as he was drowning in disappointment, the officer there, Hotan, recognized him. He asked if you weren't that crazy adventurer from the Bima Mountain cave. Hotan wanted to speak with Jae-hyun for a minute. A moment later, he let the cat out of the bag. He knew Hyrka had encountered a mutant in the cave. Our hero tried to brush it off, saying he just found a weird-eyed werewolf. But Hotan, that's exactly what I'm talking about, she insisted. He explained that the defeated beast was highly likely exposed to that cursed power known as the corruption. Hotan did not know exactly who or what the corrupted was. All they knew was that every monster who touched his power lost its mind. Many creatures had fallen victim to this power. Together, they put a bounty on this creature's head. Hearing about the prize, Jae-hyun jumped right in. "I'm in too." He shouted that he wanted to join the mission to catch the corrupt one. Hotan says you're just a kid, it's too early, but our hero sticks to his guns and won't back down. So Hotan decided to give Hyrkan a chance. He told her to go to Banks Castle, east of Fagus Castle, and find a man named Ahimbri. He also promised that Ahimbri would write a letter of recommendation to teach Hyrkan everything he needs to know. Now that's favoritism. Our hero was over the moon after receiving the recommendation letter. Now, the opportunity he'd been looking for had come to him. Such a unique task, and being a Himbri student. He couldn't even imagine the video that would come out of this. Record views were guaranteed. A Himbri was one of the 7 students of Grandmaster Ox. Every wizard would sell their soul to meet her. Because the guy was famous for giving away rare skill books. Yanni a Himbri was an incredibly important NPC, like a walking treasure chest of the game. Hyun would no longer have to worry about finding content for his next video. The kingdom of content was waiting for him. But just as he was leaving, he remembered a vital task he had to do. Hyun headed toward the forest. The skeleton summoned its companion. Because he remembered he hadn't properly checked the rewards. Let's see what would come out of that bag of bones. He decided to sacrifice the werewolf skull, loot from the last war, to empower his skeleton companion. The pile of bones absorbed the skull's dark energy like a sponge and gained a far more terrifying power than before. Next up was the Cursed Scout necklace. The moment our hero put it around his neck, the item's sinister effects spread through his body. So Jaehyun finished all his evil preparations for his next mission. But before heading into adventure, he tossed 2 more skulls to the ground and raised 2 new bags of bones with dark magic. While the first skeleton seemed shocked by the crowd, Jaehyun declared that from now on, the 3 of them would fight as one. He was eager to test his new soldier's strength when he soon came face to face with a giant bear deep in the forest. The monster attacked instantly. Although Jaehyun managed to dodge the first claw, the furious bear wouldn't stop, launching one attack after another. Jaehyun waited for the right moment, and ordered one of his allies to draw the monster's attention, to take the aggro. The skeleton lunged forward on command, but the bear proved to be smarter. He caught the pile of bones and tossed it aside like a ragdoll. Jaehyun shouted tactical orders, saying a direct attack wouldn't work and they must strike the opponent's blind spot. This time, he handed the task over to the other skeleton. He crept up on his loyal servant the bear and took an attack position. But it suffered the same fate as the first, leveled by a single blow from the beast. Jaehyun flew into a rage when he saw his orders were being ignored. This bag of bones made the exact same mistake as the last one. Right in the middle of that chaos, his first love, the skeleton, stepped forward. Jaehyun's hopes were rekindled. Maybe this time it would turn out to be a decent piece of work. His ally drew his sword and ran toward the bear. He swung his sword, but the result didn't change. It was leveled just like the others. Jaehyun was so furious he was about to tear his hair out. After a while, Jaehyun gathered the scattered bones, lined them up, and shook heaven and earth with his speech. You didn't have a brain anyway, but this was too much. He tried to explain that they must position themselves based on the enemy's moves when a monster attacks. He was trying to get it into their heads that instead of rushing in, they should strike like a sneaky snake from outside the monster's line of sight. But Jaehyun realized the bitter truth. What they said didn't go in one ear and out the other. Because they didn't even have ears. His anger was growing exponentially. Being able to summon 3 skeletons at once was great, but they were all completely useless. The problem was they knew nothing about teamwork. All they knew was how to mimic each other. They lacked the intelligence for an organized attack. What's more, mana costs had tripled. Even though Jaehyun reached level 20 as he wanted, he had to scrap his plans to film with these bunglers. Instead, he decided to take them to training camp to whip these bags of bones into shape until the Bangso Castle mission. But Jaehyun's dream was so innocent, 3 allies would fight while he kicked back and relaxed. But reality had hit him like a slap in the face. Far from taking it easy, he had to go babysit. The dream of escaping the front lines had vanished. He had to do all the dirty work with his own hands again, carrying it on his back. Meanwhile, at the Bangso Castle branch unit, players waited impatiently like vultures for their prey. An actor entering the hall caused a stir. The crowd swarmed the man to find out his mission, ready to use force if necessary. Watching this scene from afar, Jaehyun likened them to hungry hyenas scavenging for a kill. There were types like this all over the world. Instead of succeeding through their own efforts, they loved living off the backs of others. They were living literally like parasites. An official tried to greet Jaehyun, but he ignored the man and walked past with an icy expression. No one should have scented his mission. He went straight to the official and slammed the recommendation letter down on the desk. Once the official approved the letter and granted passage, the sycophants around him immediately swarmed Jaehyun, trying to tag along. But Jaehyun snapped at them all and kept going. He had only one question in mind. What kind of legends and rewards would this mysterious quest bring him? His real goal was to bond with the Mage Ahimbra and secure his future. When he entered the wizard's room, he couldn't believe his eyes. The inside was like a battlefield.
Yeah.
Everything was a mess. Ahimbra snapped at him, saying he didn't have an appointment. However, Jaehyun immediately introduced himself using the nickname Hyrkan and explained the situation. The wizard muttered that Hyrkan having such a reference despite being a rookie proved he was no ordinary person. Anyway, he handed out the rewards without delay. Jaehyun was over the moon as he looked at the loot in his hands. These were 2 incredibly rare skill books. But when Ahimbra suddenly said they were done and showed him the door, Jaehyun's joy was cut short. Jaehyun froze as the wizard wished him a safe journey. He was officially being fired while waiting for a new chain mission. He hadn't come all this way just for 2 books. He was about to lose the big fish, and despair overwhelmed his entire body. Panicked, he screamed that he would do anything to be an apprentice. He practically cast his pride aside and pleaded. The wizard faltered at such determination. Are you serious? A sly smile appeared on the sorcerer's lips as he gave Hyrkan a suicidal mission, to steal an egg directly from the nest. Jaehyun's circuits fried when the mission gave no reward. While shaking with fear, another player was approaching him. This guy showing off his fortune and gear caught everyone's attention. He burst in, asking if the Haho mask was here. What? Jaehyun was cursing his luck. While expecting a grand main quest, he couldn't believe this pathetic task from the NPC. An egg hunt with no reward? Our confused hero wondered if this nonsense was worth his time. Until someone asks about the mission. When the players heard Jaehyun was involved, they swarmed him like a pack of starving wolves. Completely forgetting about these vultures, Jaehyun found himself trapped in a crowd with no escape. That mysterious warrior, shouting to clear the way through the chaos, reached Jaehyun's side. The warrior pushing through the crowd wanted to take Jaehyun's time for a private meeting. Jaehyun rejected the offer while wondering who this man was. But things changed when the warrior addressed him as Lord Haho Mask. He offered to collaborate away from the crowd. As the two stopped to talk, the warrior apologized for his rude entrance. She explained that she urgently needed to speak with Jaehyun alone. Looking at the man's gear, Jaehyun knew he was a ranker, but he didn't recognize his face. More importantly, how this man knew her. Jaehyun decided to keep his guard up until he received more information. He asked why it's called the Haho Mask. The warrior admitted he knew who Jaehyun was and that he had received a quest from the mage. Jaehyun cut to the chase and asked who the man was and what he wanted. He had no intention of wasting time by fighting. The mysterious figure stared at Jaehyun, said they made a mistake, and apologized. And Jaehyun continued to play the fool. Accepting the apology, Jaehyun walked away, saying he'd put the misunderstanding behind him for now. After Jaehyun left, another player spoke up and assessed the warrior's situation. They might have found the wrong person. Only a rookie player would leave their watch out in the open like that. The other player mentioned that the Corrupt Count quest is almost finished. There was no longer a need to watch the wizard, but the warrior with glasses insisted that the egg mission was the main point. They had no room for error. As everyone returned to their places, Jaehyun watched everything from a distance, sneakily. He realized the warrior approaching him was not alone. They were part of a guild but hadn't offered the expected deal. Taking a different approach showed they were no ordinary guild. What's really annoying is that he didn't even know who these players were. But one thing was for sure. Jaehyun had discovered an important truth. The egg mission was more than just a simple gathering task. These players probably watched the video and went after it. The fact they let him go so easily proved they cared more about the Ahimbra mission than the Haho Mask. Jaehyun didn't know about this mission, but he knew he had to stay under the radar until it was finished. Yet he was weary because new maniacs kept showing up to ruin his day. Old enemies like Cha Seohyun were already enough trouble to deal with. Speaking of him, his secretary, Park Suji, appeared with a bottle of water. Park Suji asked about the guild entrance exam. Cha Seoyun said that all the candidates were incompetent, and the exam was a waste of time. Then Cha Seoyun asked about the current status of the Hell Mask. His secretary, Park Suji, said Jae-hyun isn't returning calls and likely went to another guild. Furious, Seoyun asked if they were sure. Park Suji wasn't sure, and her boss gave her strict orders not to return without definitive answers. Park Suja asked what President Seoyun said before leaving. The secretary said the president hasn't replied yet. Seoyun took the chairman's silence as a sign that Warlord was doing well. When she first mentioned playing Warlord, she recalled the days the president tried to arrange a forced marriage. Anyway, Seoyun ordered us to find new candidates and have a report ready by tomorrow. Even though Park Suji complained about the lack of time, her boss left without listening to any excuses, leaving the poor girl talking to herself. Back to Seoyun, the vibe has changed. It's been a long time since I've been to Lizard Marsh. He believed the mission was near the wizard's castle. And since an egg had to be collected, it definitely belonged to a creature in this swamp. Since the monsters here are high level, he decided it's best to use the skill buff on Seoyun. To do this, he had to draw a mark and cast the right spell. And there, he activated the Helmet of Madness on its skeleton. The effects began to show on his ally immediately. Seoyun was surprised by the sight and couldn't wait to test if it worked. Our hero ordered the pile of bones to attack him, but there was a fatal detail he forgot in this experiment. The fact that his loyal servant could lose his mind in this process, the skeleton, ordered to attack his master, leaped at his throat without a second's hesitation. Seoyun realized things had gone south, but it was already too late. Still, he had to put a stop to this nonsense. His reflexes kicked in, and he slapped his comrade's head, preventing an even bigger disaster. While scolding the poor skeleton to never raise its voice at its master again, he wondered if this odd behavior was a system error. Hearing the noise, the swamp lizards rushed onto the scene to put the intruders in their place. Seoyun, on the other hand, smirked. The very test subjects he wanted to study had walked right into his hands. With Helm of Madness and bone armor maxed out, the three skeleton friends turned into absolute killing machines. As the lizards took their battle stance, the swamp turned into a sea of blood at Seoyun's command. As his army crushed the rivals, the victor of the battle was clear from the very first second. Enemies are going down one by one. Jae-hyun was thrilled to see this amazing performance from his team. Now the real atmosphere was ready. He didn't need to rush while looking for the egg. After all, the point was to level up and evolve constantly. But a pair of sneaky eyes was watching him from the bushes. Ilya, this woman was pathologically obsessed with her own beauty. He thought the world revolved around him, believing one look would make everyone worship him. He spent his whole life having others do everything for him. His slaves were always at his command, but his luck ran out in this cursed swamp, and he fell face first into the mud. Wallowing in the mud, he cursed his incompetent slave who had dragged him here just to level up. Sadly, that slave had already kicked the bucket, leaving our princess defenseless in this wilderness. Terrified of monsters, Ilya's eyes lit up when she saw Jae-yun's massive power. He had found his next victim. She quickly pulled herself together, approached Jae-yun, and started a pity act, using fake tears to claim she hurt her leg. While claiming she couldn't walk because of monsters, she was dead certain the player couldn't resist a beauty like her. The plan was simple. She'd wrap this fool around her finger with her charm and use him until she escaped. But Jae-yun ripped up the script. He turned his back and walked away without even giving the girl a single glance. Ilya was in for the shock of his life. Rejection wasn't in his vocabulary. She tried to run after him and beg. But Jae-yun didn't even care. As Ilya seethed with confusion turning into pure, toxic rage, our hero went back to work. Jae-yun tried to slice the lizards, but the leech behind him kept breaking his concentration. He hated wasting time. If you play Warlord, you've got to fend for yourself, that was the rule, but this girl just wouldn't listen. Tired of the harassment, he finally stopped and asked in a cold voice what it would take to get rid of this persistent pest. When the woman said she dropped her sword in the swamp, Jae-yun agreed to help on the condition that if he found it, she'd leave him alone. Although Ilya seemed to accept the deal, he was secretly plotting his next move. The naive one, thinking his new slave had fallen into his trap, grinned slyly in a drunken haze of victory. When they reached the sword, Jae-yoon stated clearly that he would take it, but if she broke her word, there would be trouble. When he sent his skeletons to get the sword, Ilya finally had the chance he was waiting for. The girl was overjoyed, thinking Jae-yoon was defenseless once the 3 skeletons moved away. He wanted to make the mage, whom he thought was nothing without his summons, pay for ignoring him. He put his treacherous plan into motion and lunged like a sneaky snake to stab Jae-yoon in the back. But for Jae-yoon, this move was as slow as a grasshopper's hop. He parried the attack and caught the girl in one move. Thrown like a sack of potatoes, Ilya sank into the deep waters of the swamp, screaming that his protectors would make Jae-yoon regret this, while our hero calmly told him to look behind him. At first, she thought he was bluffing, but then she felt the cold breath of truth on her neck. Jae-yoon had thrown him right into the mutant lizard's den. His threats suddenly turned into screams of terror. Jae-yoon had been acting like he fell for his cheap trick from the very start. He had the experience to spot a liar by their eyes. He already saw this girl as a useless burden who was just wasting his time. Ignoring the chaos behind him and the girl's screams, he turned back to his skeletons acting strangely. He gave them a harsh scolding to stop fooling around and learn some useful skills instead. And the long-awaited notification sound rang in our ears. Player Ilya has been eliminated. To Jae-yoon, she was now just a free point in his account. He had simply left the girl at the mercy of the creatures. What's there to be surprised about? Plus, Jae-yoon thought she was bluffing about that little princess's army of bodyguards. Unfortunately, the pathetic pack of fanatics watching Ilya's stream had seen exactly what happened to their goddess and were seething with rage. It only took seconds for things to spiral out of control. Out of the misty swamp waters, a sucker fueled by revenge lunged, but this pathetic attempt at payback ended in a fiasco before it even began. Staring at the pathetic man with icy eyes, Jae-yoon wondered why he'd throw his life away for nothing. He cruelly reminded him that she wouldn't even thank him, wouldn't look at him, and didn't even know he existed. But the love-struck guy only responded to these sensible words with laughter. With eyes wild, he began to shout that famous vow of love. Jae-yoon just pulled the plug on the guy in one move amidst this nonsense. He remembered the traps that sneaky girl had set for him. Clearly, these tricks were that devil's standard routine. He didn't feel a shred of regret for what he'd done, but he hadn't counted on this. It was clear the girl took that meat wall seriously, and now the marsh would be swarming with similar fools seeking revenge. That slithering snake, with her own enchanting venom, was playing the flock like a fiddle, making even death look sweet to them. That's why all those weirdos have been showing up in front of Jae-yoon lately. It was actually a blessing for our hero, who was already itching for a mission. And now, as if they didn't have enough trouble, fate kept piling up new obstacles. Truthfully, Jae-yoon would have loved to find that player and send them to the grave again just for fun, but time was running out. He had to slip away without attracting too much attention. Even so, taking it as an opportunity, he didn't fail to check over the ranks he had pulled down. And bingo! The guy he just took down was carrying a jaw-dropping fortune in elite gear. Jae-yoon was almost ready to pray for these rookie praise served to him on a silver platter. Thanks to them, he was about to make a ton of money. Just then, another Yulia loyalist leaped onto the scene. This time, instead of hiding, Jae-yoon smirked and confessed that he was the one who finished the girl off. However, our hero soon realized that this time, it wasn't just a single carp, but a massive school gathered before him. It was time for a strategic retreat, for the army of players he faced was too massive to count. It was unbelievable that so many idiots were ready to die for a streamer girl. Instead of just running away, a diabolical idea came to mind. He deployed his core squad, his loyal skeletons. But this group had already prepared for such skeletons. Jae-yoon realized the bitter truth. This group was on a much higher level than him, and it was impossible for his current minions to even scratch them. So he decided to bolt, and swore to himself. When he grew strong enough, he would return and hunt them all down, one by one. He wouldn't show mercy once he reached that level. He stopped to catch his breath after sprinting deep into the swamp. Shaking off that many leeches hadn't been easy, but he couldn't let his guard down. The main problem was, while running frantically, he had no idea where he was on the map. The atmosphere here was far more sinister than the rest of the swamp. He racked his brain, and finally the pieces fell into place. Meanwhile, Ilya's loyal dogs kept looking for her, when suddenly something strange happened on stage. Jae-yoon's skeletons were dancing in the mud as if to mock. The players couldn't grasp this absurd scene, but they realized they were being mocked and got furious. Someone who couldn't stand the shame drew their sword and charged at the skeletons. But what he found wasn't a pile of bones, but a massive monster straight out of his nightmares. The poor player was stunned, frozen in fear. The monster snatched him in one move before he could even scream. The others watching were left in horror. The monster before them was no ordinary creature. It was the legendary dragon lizard, absolute ruler of the swamp. While they watched trembling, Jae-yoon lurked in the shadows, enjoying the view. He had already figured it out. This was definitely that scaled monster's lair. The dragon lizard was a total machine of destruction, with its defense, HP, and attack power. Normally, it would take a solid raid team of 20 to 40 people to bring this monster down. But Jae-yoon had heard that this boss was cut down before, so he wasn't supposed to be around. But the rules of the game were clear. If someone with the relevant quest entered the area, the monster would respawn. This means the cursed quest Mage Ahimra locked away was right here. The mission was simple but deadly. Kill the creature and deliver its egg to that senile sorcerer. But he couldn't grasp why such a suicidal mission was given to someone at such a low level. A volcanic rage erupted within him toward the mage. He gave her a task way over her head, basically telling her to go die. Fortunately, luck was on his side. Ilya's guided cattle herd had already started clashing with the monster. Right then, one of them screamed at the top of their lungs to fall back. They realized they were no match for the beast. But would Jae-yoon allow that? He immediately summoned one of the modified bone bags to block the player's escape route. The trapped wretches had only one choice left. They would either dance to the death with that monster to carve a path, or become its prey, and the Drake had no intention of showing them any mercy. Jae-yoon took advantage of the chaos to slip away, feeling deep down that he owed a debt of gratitude to the mindless herd of people who had unwittingly acted as his human shield. Jae-yoon had zero intention of dancing with that massive monster right now. After all, as a crazed loot hunter, his only goal was to bring that meat egg to the wizard. So he delved deep into the lizard's lair, but was terrified to find nothing but empty void instead of the egg. Desperate, he started scratching every corner like a madman until a suspicious object caught his eye. Moving a bit closer, he noticed it looked more like a lumpy rock than an egg. Suddenly, the system's annoying notification rang in his ears. His skeleton companion had kicked the bucket, which meant that massive dragon lizard, it was returning to its lair, and Jae-yoon's time was up. Sensing his precious treasure was stolen, the monster burst into his lair in a mad rage. He was looking for that thief everywhere. Jae-yoon desperately tried to squeeze into any hole he could find. With the monitor lizard right on his tail, he didn't have the luxury of searching the rest of the den. He had no choice but to grab that weird object and bolt without even looking back. Inside, he prayed that this was the gadget the wizard wanted. Meanwhile, the group of poor players he called a herd of cattle had been completely wiped off the map. By the time Jae-yoon approached the scene, only mangled corpses and sorrow remained. He thought about how fascinating this limitless freedom offered by the Warlord was. With the chaotic nature of the game, countless maniacs were running wild. While gathering loot from dead players like a vulture, Jae-yoon decided to give himself a cool speech. He muttered that he had been too easy on them so far, as if he were just playing around. But unlike his rivals, he took this game dead seriously, and he threw his warning into the void as if someone were listening. Next time someone dares to step in his way, Jae-yoon, who shows no mercy, sets the terms and walks out coolly. Once he reaches the safe zone, he makes an oath to himself. If those brainless cattle dare to follow him after being warned, if they pick a fight, he'll give them hell and start an all-out war. To cool things down and fix his cash flow, Jae-yoon decides to do some hunting. See, the loot he pocketed during the swamp adventure was quite tempting. After a while, he presents that rare drop from the dragon lizard to the Mage Ahimra, emphasizing that getting this gadget was no easy feat, and praying that the senile mage accepts it. Because he has no intention of ever stepping foot on that damn map again. Ahimber scrutinizes the object in his hand and confirms it is exactly what he's looking for. And Jae-yoon is dancing with joy, having delivered the right goods. The wizard is buttering him up. He admits it's shockingly fast, far beyond expectations. Jae-yoon plays it humble, saying he just did his best, but he has other things on his mind. He's already asking about the next task, the money. Ahimber smiles slyly and asks if our hero knows what that mysterious object really is. He explains that the mage team discovered this thing while raiding a mutant beast zone and named it the Corruption Stone. For Jae-yoon, this confession is an epiphany, explaining why those shady figures have been hunting him like rabid dogs. Such a critical item was undoubtedly a key point of the main scenario. Those players were fighting tooth and nail to keep others from taking that treasure. Because letting them escape would have been a major blow to their own progress. At first, Jae-yoon thought this mission was a scam, but now the tables have turned. Mage Ahimber mumbles that he knew it was a setup but had to test a potential rookie's will. Now that Jae-yoon has proven himself, he questions Ahimber. Are you ready to fight the corruption? Our guy sees this as an opportunity served on a silver platter. Refusing hasn't even crossed his mind. But Mage Ahimber suddenly turns serious and tells Jae-yoon he's not ready yet. Such dangerous missions aren't for rookies. At that moment, Jae-yoon painfully realizes his level is still rock bottom for this kind of work. Still, Ahimber says he's willing to take him as a student, but only if Hyrkan, meaning our Jae-yoon, begs him politely. A short while later, Jae-yoon storms out of the wizard's room like a keg of gunpowder. He's lost his cool. He's annoyed by that senile AI NPC's condescending attitude and is getting more suspicious that Ahimbrain is a total fraud. Some time passes, and that famous dragon lizard finally kicks the bucket. A powerhouse team of high-level players joined forces to eliminate the threat. The guild leader met with the others, and panting, he approached the allied player, trying to suck up by calling him way tougher than expected. Then, the captain thanked him over and over for the vital support that saved their asses in battle. Yet this snake, who once tried to corner Jae-yoon, had now disguised himself and slipped in among these losers. The guild leader was grateful he took the job, admitting they would have kicked the bucket by now without him. The captain proudly offered a handful of gold to pay his debt, but our mysterious guy just brushed the money aside. When he said this wasn't the agreed reward and that he loathed breaking the rules of the game, the captain froze in shock. Normally, the assistants would snap up the money, but this one was different. In fact, he was actually a high-ranking official. The captain was so intrigued by why he was taking a mission so far below his level that he finally couldn't resist asking. He said he could take whatever comes out of the creature's nest, but he also warned that he'll likely end up with nothing. But the player's only concern was the corruption stone. He only accepted this miserable mission just to find that damn stone. That sneaky so-called assistant heard the lizard dragon was back and wanted to slip away with the loot before that nuisance Mask took him down. Since it hadn't happened yet, he figured the corruption stone must still be in the nest. So this dummy thought. He knew taking down a boss monster was no child's play, but he was full of confidence. He had no doubt that the reward was waiting for him. But when he got back to the nest, he had nothing to show for it. It was empty. Someone had snatched the stone before him, and that was more than enough to drive him crazy. Back to our Jae-hun, he felt like a king in his own home. He was sure this new journey would change his life, if he could eat, that is. Jae-hun used to say at every chance that more than revenge, he needed some quality food in his stomach. Now his only concern was eating a meal fit for a king. He was careful and saved every penny, even for his funeral, but once he cleared the main mission, he felt like a rich man. After the reward, he thought financial crises were a thing of the past. He also made off with tons of loot from other players. He worked just like a scavenger. After all that hardship and chaos, it was only natural for him to treat himself. Who could resist her? As he checked his bank account, a sizzling, juicy steak appeared before his eyes. But after paying his debts, reality hit him like a slap in the face. He had less than 1,000 won left. Forget the steak. He couldn't even afford the cheapest instant noodles at the market. After all that sweat and tears, He couldn't understand why he still had no medals. Just as she was about to hit rock bottom with depression, a message from Ramini startled her. His editor was asking when he'd return to the videos. He had completely forgotten the girl. It had been a while since she spoke to her editor, and she neglected to tell her what was happening. After all, Jaein wasn't the one hitting the record button. Because he knew he was being watched, he wanted to hang out in the shadows and stay low for a while. But then he stopped and thought. Was it fair to starve because of some strange players? He didn't even care what anyone thought anymore. Hunger outweighed everything. Instead of hiding like a coward, he decided to do what had to be done. Jaein logged back into the game with a growling stomach. The target was the Forest of the Dead map. Once we got there, Jaein couldn't help but mention how much this place stresses people out. No matter how many times I came, the creepiness of this damn place never faded. Still, there was no better place for leveling up quickly. Plus, this creepy atmosphere would be the perfect clickbait for his future videos, keeping viewers glued to the screen. Jaein announced to his comrades that it was time to hunt and introduced his new skeleton. From now on, magic would be at the heart of the strategy. Everyone should have watched their step. One of the skills he took from Grimoire was summoning skeletal mages. A total necromancy show was beginning. As Jaein leveled up, this freak he created would grow stronger. The skill was great, but the skeleton mage was a total mana hog. It just kept on exploiting. Anyway, Jaein was ready for the hunt. He explained his goals. Enemy skeletons. Unlike ours, these were much stronger and more savage. So Jaein's allies should have acted like a real team. But seeing his allies tremble and hesitate, Jaein seethed with rage. He ordered them to join the battle instead of standing there like scarecrows. He said immortal monsters aren't like normal creatures and shouldn't act like cowards. But his words went in one ear and out the other. Seeing things weren't working, Jaein shouted that time is money and they had to fight immediately. Right then, one of his skeletons charged forward heroically. But the enemy skeleton didn't even flinch. The damn thing wouldn't go down. Jaein drilled it into their heads that normal attacks wouldn't work on these bone piles. Changing the strategy was essential. He pulled a massive sledgehammer from his inventory and smashed several enemy skeletons to teach them a lesson. Now that's art. After the show of force, he told his allies they must crush the enemy's heads with a sledgehammer. Violence is sometimes the only solution, but Jae's skeletons were still shaking with fear. Ours called the bluff. The goal was to send 100 enemy skeletons to their graves in 100 minutes. That meant an average of 1 skeleton per minute, and if they messed up, he'd leave them behind in that damn forest. When the fear of abandonment seeped into their bones, the skeletons moved in a desperate panic. Because if the boss got angry, things would go south. After a while, Jaein was happy that the team started performing miracles. Their skeletons took to the sledgehammer work faster than expected. At this rate, his next video was going to break viewership records. He was thinking, let the money roll in. But suddenly, Jaein came face to face with a massive skeleton. This was a rare skeletal warrior. A total pain in the neck. He didn't care about this creature appearing out of nowhere. Jaein was only thinking about the rewards and that amazing steak. He attacked with his team, but since his mind was on his stomach, he missed the enemy's move. He was caught off guard. He almost got crushed. He managed to slip away at the last second. Luckily, he landed a blow on the enemy's arm. Now all he had to do was smash that pile of bones. He launched a lethal coordinated strike with his team. While asking if everyone was in one piece, a sneaky enemy tried to attack from behind and catch Jaein off guard. But Jaein was smirking. But there was one thing they forgot. Another sneaky team member, who hadn't attacked yet, was lying in wait. The skeleton mage was ready to put on a show. He hurled the fireball he'd prepared at the enemy, turning him to ash. It's a total visual feast. Jaein was thinking about the crazy views this video would get and that dream meal he'd finally earn. Just as I was dreaming of that juicy steak, the system started screaming. Turns out the map's boss has awakened. Look at her, trying to avenge her dead sidekick. A rift tore open right under Jae's nose. A disgusting freak popped out of it. But ours just grinned like he'd found treasure instead of being scared, the freak. Of course he recognized this face. The golden skeleton, the godfather of the dead forest. The first mage-class boss, known for swatting rookies like flies. Jaein didn't expect to face Bogeyman this early. It's also unclear if he can win. But he knows if he cuts it, the video will break viewership records. He said he might as well strengthen his team. Suddenly, he realized there was no one left behind him. When the meaning dried up, everything it called to vanished into thin air. So he's left high and dry with the boss. I got the chills, of course. Summoning 4 allies, including the mage, drained him to the core. At the entrance, it all came down to muscle power. After all this time, he got his watch running again. He finally put on his armor. Ready for battle. If it involves food, our boy never backs down. Especially when stake is on the line. Would the enemy dare to stay when they see Jaeyu coming? He began spewing deadly spells upon her. Jaehyun realized one hit would send him to the grave. They don't call this heap of bones the rookie killer for nothing. Plus, he can't just let the guy spam spells like a machine gun. If he wants to win, he has to silence those spells. Our guy went on the offensive with this momentum. But he played dumb and hit the boss's magic circle instead of the guy directly. He's realized spells are tied to the hands. He thought if he broke her hands, it would all be over. The boss did not find that move funny at all. Even the system is sounding the alarm. The monster is no longer about revenge. He just wants a massacre. He's lost it. He wants blood. He's sworn to crush anyone who hurts him and tear them apart. Jaehyun was stunned. But while waiting for an answer, he was caught in a rain of attacks from the enraged enemy. His only choice, run for his life. But the assault was already right on his heels. He hit the ground so hard that Jaehyun went tumbling head over heels. He's cornered, nowhere left to run. Worse yet, he doesn't remember this attack pattern at all.